So we're down to the last week of our readings in this You Matter 40 Days of Steps in Circles. You Matter 40 Days of Steps in Circles. We have days 36 to 42 ahead of us this week. And 40, 42. Well, we have two bonus days because this has been so good, so we want you to have two bonus days. The goal of this kind of 40 days of steps in circles is that you would take some God-warm steps and that you would connect with some God-warm heart circles, that you would take some God-warm steps and some God-warm heart circles. What we've been saying over these last number of weeks is that all of us can have a God-warm heart. Again, I want to say, because obviously I realize there's a number of guests and probably a number of people that even are part of New Hope that just haven't been able to join this 40 days of steps in circles and that. But all of us here this morning can have a God-warm heart. We can be on this journey towards a God-warm heart. God has warmed your heart probably in more ways than you've already realized. No matter what's going on in your life right now, this day, or this last week, or this past year, or the past decade, you can still have a God-warm heart. That's the kind of God that we're following today, that there is this God that He wants us to have a God-warm heart. So over these last number of weeks and stuff, and then what you saw in the video is that in some small groups and some Bible studies that we did together as a church years and years ago, that there was a story of some God-warm steps that some of the people had taken back then. The story of serving a meal in the community at one of our kind of a sister church, a church in our community over real close to the Neenah Library. That meal, some of our people are still serving in that meal, different people over all these years. The person that I talked about that ended up passing away from cancer, that was years ago, but did you see how it still is warming their hearts even after these many years? Some of those kind of stories we're hearing in this round. Some people are saying, you've been talking about, Pastor, for a number of years now, to do 15 minutes a day, daily reading, Bible reading, a little bit of prayer every day, not just on Sundays, but through the week and that. And I just haven't been able to do that. Well, with this 40 days of steps in circles, I've been able to do that. I'm stepping into it, and I'm really enjoying it, and it's warming me. And so we're hearing those stories. There's a number of people that have joined circles for the very, very first time. And again, they probably went in with some fear, some trepidation and that, but they're glad that they did. And so again, we're coming to the end of it. We'll do another round at some point, probably next spring. Maybe today we'll say, hey, the next time, I think I'm just going to risk and take the plunge and jump out and see what happens when in one of these circles and take some of these steps. So again, knowing that probably there was a number of you that haven't read this last week, but there is a number of you that had, the readings for these last 7 days, including today, has been this idea that you were shaped for serving God. And the word shape is an acronym. You were shaped for serving God. The shape means the S, spiritual gifts, H for heart, A for abilities, P for personality, E for experience. That no matter how we serve, all those things kind of factor in. So if you've read them, hopefully you have, you're finding your heart kind of warm. Maybe you already see how it is that you have been shaped for some of the serving that you maybe have already done. Or maybe you can see how God is shaping you for some service that you are about to do. Again, maybe there might be some of you, we still have some of these books available, that you want to pick up a copy of this book afterwards and read these 7 days and see how it is that God is shaping you and starting to warm your heart in ways that maybe you didn't imagine that was possible. I'm just going to mention one of the verses that happened this week that was in some of our readings, and it's this verse from Psalm 100, verse 2, just the first half of this verse, where it just says, serve the Lord with gladness. Serve the Lord with gladness. And so that's what I try to do over and over again as a pastor, even though I've been doing it for over 30 plus years now, and I'm getting older. You keep probably some of you are tired of me saying how old I'm getting, but I just keep serving the Lord with gladness, and it's not always easy. There are times I get real tired. I was pretty tired yesterday from some of the serving that I was doing that. But somehow God has shaped me that I cannot not serve. I cannot not serve. And again, it's in a limited way. I've been realizing that. But there's a lot of ways that I cannot not serve. And oftentimes it's doing some things that I probably shouldn't be doing, should invite you to do it and to be a part of the serving. And there's a lot of you already serving in our children's ministry, serving in adult ministries, serving around the building and behind the scenes, all kinds of ways in that. But yesterday we had a wedding here and usually spend a little bit of time, setting up. And, we don't have weddings all that time. And so I don't have a team to come in and do a bunch of the janitorial work, and I don't know what it is, but I just so I'll come in and move the chairs apart. So there's an aisle here because we have the chairs there. And then yesterday there was these really tall glass cylinders in the back, and it had a bunch of rocks, a bunch of water, and a nice bouquet, and it looked really sharp. And there were some children involved in this wedding, and the older brother was pulling a little sister in a wagon, and he came through that door and came around right back there where they came around the corner, and the wagon caught the cylinder, and there was a memory that no one will ever forget at that wedding. It came down and crashed, and all this water went all over the place. The glass was all over the place. Of course, we just kept going on. I'm an experienced pastor. Yeah, just keep going. But then afterwards, some people helped clean up some of the big stuff, but then there was a lot of water, and so got out a shop vac, was vacuuming up the water and putting the chairs back. And again, the crazy thing about this is that tomorrow, all this carpet right here gets ripped out. We're getting new carpet this week. Isn't that exciting? So I cannot not serve. I maybe should have probably called some people, but it's like, I don't want to bother anybody on a Saturday afternoon and whatever it is that they're doing in that. But a part of this, and so I'm trying to get myself better at serving in those ways so that you can be, because I know there's some of you have hearts that are already shaped like that, and so I'm working on that. But part of this idea that I cannot not serve is because I'm following Jesus. This is kind of my goal for my life as a pastor, however I can finish out. If I can just finish out following Jesus, serving his church, receiving and releasing inspiration. I mean, it's just something that I continue to do, receiving and releasing inspiration, and all of that results for me to have a warm heart. Serving is not something that I grit my teeth to do. Serving is something that I get to do, and it results in a warm heart. Maybe sometimes that's why I'm not sharing some of the serving that I should be serving. But the reason I'm following this Jesus, the reason that all of us will come to follow this Jesus, is that Jesus always serves first. No matter how much that I pour out in energy, how much I pour out in hours in serving you and serving the larger church in that, I'm following Jesus who serves first in ways so much greater beyond my little acts of service, our little acts of service. Again, we follow a Jesus who really it's true of that he cannot not serve. Jesus cannot not serve. The reason you're here this morning, because you know something is telling you, maybe you don't understand it all yet, maybe you haven't been able to process it all yet, maybe you will never be able to process it all the way, but we know that there is a Jesus who cannot not serve. That's why you're here this morning. We're following a Jesus who cannot not serve. Would you say that phrase with me, please? Jesus cannot not serve. Jesus cannot not serve. But serving doesn't come without its challenges. So this afternoon, when we turn on any of the NFL games, and I'm not a real big fan of the NFL right now, or a fan of the Packers, and again, it's not their fault, but originally they had scheduled a game at noon today. And so looking at that, because, we plan everything around the Packers here at New Hope, and a lot of the churches all over Wisconsin do the same thing. So I scheduled an event this evening for 5 o'clock. knowing that the game would be over at noon. But of course, starting in October, not at the end of November like they did a couple years ago, it's called the flex schedule. Guess what they did? They flexed the day. It is now the game of the week starting at 3 o'clock. So during the second half, I've got over 20 people coming at 5 o'clock, and they've been very gracious. But it comes with a challenge. And again, this afternoon, when we're watching some of those NFL games, there will be a commercial that will come on. And in the setup of the commercial, there are some people, sometimes a family, sometimes just a couple, sometimes just some people, but they're complaining about their cell phone service or lack thereof. And all of a sudden, Coach Mike McCarthy enters into the scene and says, "Challenge!" And then he fixed their cell phone service, and everybody's happy. But even that little commercial, challenge. Well, everything in life can have challenges. There are a lot of challenges that take place. But we see Jesus, we watch Jesus, how he serves through and over every challenge. We have a Jesus who serves through and over every challenge. And the reason that he does that is because souls matter. You matter. So we see Jesus leaving the wonders and the glories of heaven as we're going to celebrate again this year during the Christmas season, the birth of Christ. That he leaves all the wonders and challenges and faces this challenge of being born here, born in a poor family. We see all the challenges that he goes through by religious people, by people who are oftentimes far from God, but yet they know that they want to be close to God, and so they come to him. We see Jesus go through all the challenges of having his body suffer in ways that it's hard for us to imagine. Even for those of us who are old enough and saw the Passion of Christ and maybe have watched that Passion of Christ movie more than once. So we come on a Sunday morning and here's my body, here's my blood. It's here because he serves us, and he cannot not serve us. So he allowed his body to face all those challenges. So we watch him. All the lashes that happen on his back. The crown of thorns that goes on his head. The nails that go through his hands and his feet. The spear that comes up through his side. He faces all those challenges, and he takes a last breath. Because you matter. You've got a soul that matters. Whether you know that or not yet. He wants you to know that, and he will keep coming with acts of service until you know that. That's who our Jesus is. That's how he served me. That's how he served all of us. And so we follow this Jesus. Souls matter. You matter. But again, so when I think about how it is that I want to be following Jesus, there's challenge to that. When I think about this idea that I want to be serving his church, there's challenges to that. I'm listening to podcasts all the time, and so I was just listening to a podcast recently. They were talking about one of the movies that was out a couple of years ago, and it was about the challenge. It was about a church that didn't address people in spiritual authority abusing children. And so there's a challenge. Why would you want to be involved in a church? Even though 99% of churches, that doesn't happen in. But you see the challenge that comes to a church that is trying to serve because there is a God that cannot not serve. When it comes to this idea of receiving and releasing inspiration, there's a challenge to that. Because again, of all the godly inspiration, of all the godly receiving and releasing that, of all that, there's all kinds of other stuff that is trying to say it's inspiring. Again, there's some kind of music genre that you listen to that somehow it inspires you, but it has nothing to do with God, but yet it inspires you, and so you keep listening to it because there's thousands, maybe even millions of others that are doing the same thing. When it comes to some of these movies, that you can receive inspiration from some of those movies, and sometimes they don't have anything to do with God. Someone sent me an article from USA Today, and there's this study. I think it's a fascinating study. But it's saying that there's studies that prove that people that don't come to church, that don't come and get in some kind of a gathering, whether it's a church, whether it's a small circle within that church, and those people that are trying to kind of invent their own spirituality. People that will say things like, hey, I like this Jesus, but I don't like the church. And so I don't want any of that man-made stuff, all those man-made rules, all that kind of. So they want to invent their own spirituality kind of on their own. Those people die sooner. Again, there's these empirical studies that are showing that. Now, again, that may not be the best motivator for you to start attending church, but maybe it might be a factor. But what is that saying? Something warm happens when people gather together in the name of Jesus. That doesn't happen outside of that. Even though they're gathering around with millions and millions and millions of people in different events, whether it be a sporting event, whether it be a music event, whether it be a Hollywood event, whether it be a hunting event. There's all kinds of things that happen, and I can do it, and there's a challenge. So to be warm in Jesus, there's a challenge to that. So again, this morning I want us to think about this idea that there are some really, really hard challenges. But yet maybe this could be something that we can take a hold of just a little bit today. God is with us in each and every challenge. God is with us in each and every challenge that is facing your life, that has faced your life. And he's oftentimes meeting you in that hard challenge to take you to a place where you maybe never thought you could go. And it's warm in that place. And you're not putting yourself there. You know that somehow if you get there, God has done most of the work. And you're the benefit because we follow a God who cannot not serve. I want to take what would be about the next 10 minutes of our remaining time and go over Psalm 77. There's 20 verses. And again, boy, I really wrestled with this week. There was a part of me that wanted to just take the readings and really try to do something really, really practical, maybe guilt you into serving so that you'd start vacuuming, that you'd start changing children's diapers, that you would start washing windows or, folding bulletins. I really wanted to be practical. And I thought, no, I want to talk more about this God who cannot not serve. And he's always been like that. I mean, we're going to look at words that are 3,000 years old. But these words might speak to you today and in the days to come. So for these 20 verses, we're going to have to imagine. And part of what we want to imagine is that God is huge. I don't think we imagine that enough, how huge God is. This God who cannot not serve. In the psalm, these words, we're going to watch this psalmist. He's facing challenges, but he knows that there's this huge God, and this God has been huge in history. But as the psalmist is writing these words, and as we're considering today, the psalmist is realizing that this huge God is with me right now. He's with me in these hard challenges. And we're going to see that the psalmist realizes that if God has been huge here and God is huge now, that there is this hope for the future. And it's a warm hope. I cried out to God for help. Do you hear the challenge right there? Again, we look at that. I cried out. And I won't scare the children, but it's more than just, I cried out. Crying out to God to hear me. And when I was crying out to God to hear me, I couldn't. I don't think he could hear me. He wasn't doing anything. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands And my soul refused to be comforted. Do you hear the challenge there? My soul refused to be comforted. Again, oftentimes when our souls refuse to be comforted, well, God's not working, so I'm just going to go out and try it on my own. Somehow you got to stay here. That's what we're going to see the psalmist doing here. As much as everything in him wanted to run away from God. So it says here, I remembered you, O God, and I groaned. You weren't doing things I wanted you to do. I mused. Again, we don't use that word very often, but so I did. It got a hold of me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And my spirit grew faint because the answers weren't coming easy. The challenge that he was facing, they're just hard. And then this, you kept my eyes from closing. I wanted to go to sleep. I knew I needed to go to sleep. My body was telling me I needed to go to sleep. I couldn't function the next day if I didn't get some sleep. I couldn't go to sleep. And you kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I couldn't speak words that would solve any of this. I thought about former days. The years of long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. Again, here's my heart mused and my spirit inquired. And they asked 6 questions, and all of them are challenge questions. Will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? That's a huge question. Again, over and over again, we talk about how this God is a God of love. He's a God that cannot not love. He's a God who cannot not serve. We use this verse over and over again where God says, I'm the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. And the psalmist says, has his unfailing love vanished forever? Because I'm not. I don't feel it. Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? And there's this little word called Selah. And the invitation there is to stay in those questions. Don't run to the next thing. Don't flip back to your cell phone and start checking whatever it is that you're checking. Don't run away from God and just turn it all off. I don't want to feel it. Stay with those questions and see what God does. When the psalmist writes this, he doesn't write this in one sitting of 10 minutes. It might be over a period of 10 days or 10 months or 10 years. But he stays there. But then finally, we see in verse 10, then I thought, to this I will appeal, the years of the right hand of the Most High. If this challenge is going to be met, I need to think about who this God is. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. Even though they were long ago, there are miracles that brought hope to people when they had no hope. I will meditate on all your works and consider all your mighty deeds. Your ways, O God, are holy. What God is so great as our God? Will you ask that question? What God is so great as our God? Look around. Is there any other God as great as our God? A lot of people look at money as their God. What kind of money? What kind of God does money make? Sometimes, this whole sports thing, what kind of God is it? As huge as the NFL is, what kind of God is it? Some of us look at being Americans, that, man, isn't that, what kind of God is America? What kind of God is your health? What kind of God is alcohol? What kind of God is drugs? What kind of God can you find that will always give you hope? What God is so great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. These two characters, but they're named because people matter, and you matter. Your name's never going to appear in the Bible. My name's never going to appear in the Bible, but God has my name and your name listed. He knows your name because you matter, and he cannot not serve you, helping you to face all the challenges. We're going to wrap up with 4 more verses. I don't know if I can do justice. I mean, these verses have just been with me. And again, part of this morning and that, I've been considering these verses all this week, and that's why I've been wrestling back and forth in that. But these next set of verses and that have just, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know if I can do justice to them. But so it says here, the waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you and writhed. The very depths were convulsed. This word, writhe and convulsed. The best way to talk about these words to help us all understand it is that writhe and convulse happens when you have stomach flu. And you can't stop it. You're writhing and you're convulsing. The idea here is that God is the one that has formed all these waters, and all the time before this event, we're going to be talking about the crossing of the Red Sea, and all the times after these events, these waters do what the waters, how God has shaped them, how God has formed them. They continue to serve over that. But in these moments, these waters writhed, these waters convulsed, and he separated them, and they didn't know what was going on, but he did it so that the people could go free. They were meeting the challenge of the nation of Egypt that wanted to keep them enslaved and wanted them to die in slavery. God is making them free. God is meeting the challenge. And so then it goes on and says, the clouds poured down water, the skies resounded with thunder, your arrows flashed back and forth, your thunder was heard in the whirlwind, your lightning lit up the world, the earth trembled and quaked, your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. And I've been thinking about that, your footprints were not seen. God is this mighty act. He's doing this mighty act, but it's not about him. It's not about him. It's about his people going free. He didn't leave all kinds of elements. Here's how I was. Think about me. Think about me. I mean, he wants us to think about, but his footprints were not seen, but the people walked free. And then it ends, this psalm ends with, you led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses there and 2 other names that are named. Because people matter. You matter. We follow a God who cannot not serve. I don't know how it is that you're going to serve this God. But I'm praying that God will show you a way. Again, maybe if you haven't read these 7 days of readings with how you are shaped for serving, you want to go back and read that and reach out, contact the church office, maybe contact a local agency. Again, we're not about making New Hope, bigger and better and all that kind of stuff. We want to serve well here at New Hope, but we want to serve things like the YMCA. We want to serve like we did last year with the Salvation Army. We want to serve with other churches. But God might have a way for you to serve if you're not quite serving yet. And I pray that he will lead you and guide you to serve, because this God is so much bigger. He's huge. He was huge in the past. He's huge right now. And, well, he might be huge for eternity. And we might be there with him, because we follow a God who cannot not serve. Let's stand. We'll pray. And then we're going to speak some words that God uses to serve his church, and then we'll sing one more song. So we pray. So Lord Jesus, we ask that you would continue to help us to follow you. You are a God that is worthy of following, and you cannot not serve. So Jesus, you've been serving us today, serving us with songs, serving us with prayers, serving us with this word of God, especially from Psalm 77. Serving us the meal of Holy Communion, serving us as a family that we know as New Hope. So Jesus, we ask that you would continue to help us to know you and help us to follow you and help us to serve, so that your kingdom might always be expanding. We ask and pray it in your name, Jesus. Amen.